Good evening, everyone that is watching me live from wherever you are. Um, it is it is today is a Thursday, and I hope everyone who's watching me, you're doing. Let me hope you're doing good, and your day has been so nice wherever you're watching from. It is exactly 52 minutes now past 5 in Kampala, Uganda, where we are broadcasting from. I'm INNOSSETU. Like I said, it is a Thursday. Everything has been moving on since morning today. However, we had rains in the morning, and actually, last night we had too much rains up to morning. But so far, the temperature has been so good. It has been shining the whole. Actually, starting from 9 it has been shining, and the weather has been so good. And actually, if I can look through the window right about now, the skies are blue. Yeah, everything is looking nice. So hope you're doing good. And like if you're watching me right about now, this season it is of course in Uganda it is a grasshopper season. Keith already says that we will eat parasite. It is a grasshopper. It is a grasshopper season. So if you're watching me right away from YouTube, thank you for watching. And for those that are watching me for the first time, endeavor to subscribe to this YouTube channel and liking our videos. So those that watching me from Facebook, Blackwood Fire Radio Station, endeavor to like and follow this page. And those from Twitter, the biggest audience is always on Twitter. Like, I'm not underestimating YouTubers, those that watch us from YouTube and Facebook, but I don't know why guys always go to Twitter. Maybe it is easy for you, like it is easy for you, but we are also raised on YouTube. We also broadcast from YouTube, so you can watch us from wherever you want. Uh, Today's topic is an interesting one, and it is good news. It is good news like um, uh, Burkina Faso today. Things came again. Burkina Faso expelled more French diplomats in, of course, Burkina Faso. So, so um, uh, uh, we see that Burkina Faso's military government has expelled three French diplomats and accusing them of subversive activities. So diplomats, including two political advisors, were given 48 hours to leave the country. So the specifics of their alleged activities are not, of course, disclosed per now, but we see that this move further strains relationship between Burkina Faso and France since the military junta took, of course, power in 2022. So the junta has previously expelled the French troops, recalled the French ambassador, and of course suspended some French media outlets that were within Burkina Faso. So sources suggest that the expulsion might be related to meetings the diplomats had with civil society members. So Burkina Faso's junta government has faced criticism for its crackdown on freedom of speech amid security challenges from militant groups linked to Al Qaeda and Islamic State within Burkina Faso. So French Foreign Ministry has yet to comment on the situation that, of course, that has happened 3 hours ago from now. Yeah, this is not the first time. Wow, K. Williams listening at work. Yeah, thank you for coming through, K. Williams. Thank you for coming through. Hope you're doing good. Hope the day is moving on well with energetic vibes out there. Let me hope you're doing good, K. Williams. But like since last week, I've not seen you this week on any live on our live. I've not seen you commenting and sharing in. I don't know whether you have been too fixed because whenever we were live, I couldn't see you this week. However, the last week we interacted. Last week had interactions within our lives the whole of last week. But today I've seen you on Thursday. But I'm of course happy and glad to see you commenting in K. Williams. Let me hope you're doing good. So it is not the first time like Burkina Faso is expelling these French people. This is not the first time he's expelling these people, but we have seen a lot of changes because when, of course, Burkina Faso turned and looked at Russia, I don't know whether it's Russia that is pressurizing Burkina Faso to, of course, make things hard for French people in, of course, Burkina Faso, because like Burkina Faso junta government doesn't want to see any existence of these people, of these French people. That's why they try on. They started by expelling troops. The troops went back to France. They went on with the different diplomats. They went on with the different media related stuff that was going on within Burkina Faso. The newspaper, the radio, they had, of course, constructed. I guess they even yet to declare a new official language for Burkina Faso, because we see French as as the official language right about now today in Burkina Faso. But let me hope these people, they are also going to ban this from Burkina Faso, and of course they welcome a new language that is and that is the Russian language. I'm too busy at work. When I get a break, I check in. Oh, okay, 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 okay. I knew you were busy. So, uh, when we look at Burkina Faso, when we look at Burkina Faso, and of course, how the junta has been holding politics since 2022. At least things have tried to change. Some little things have tried to change within that time, where the Frenchmen, of course, are absent in Burkina Faso. Certain things have tried to change. So, um, Burkina Faso as a country has, of course, a long history of course, has a long history of coups and, of course, insurgencies that have happened over years. As Burkina Faso, it has a lot of insurgencies that have happened over years. Uh, the 2022 coup, it's not the first coup in Burkina Faso. There are a lot of coups that have been happening over years in Burkina Faso that have been happening. Yeah, they, I guess Burkina Faso doesn't have that long history like of peaceful transition of power. Things have been on gunpoint. Things have been forceful since, because West African countries, these are countries that are ever serious when things are concerned with, of course, managing their issues. I don't know why Burkina Faso has given the presidents that were in Burkina Faso had given that room for, of course, uh, for uh, for the French to stay for that long since, of course, colonization in Burkina Faso without doing anything. So when we look at Burkina Faso has been grappling with political instability and coup attempts, of course, in the recent uh, years. First and foremost, we know the January 2022 coup, of course, where Paul Henry Damiba led a coup that, of course, ousted President Roch Marc Kabore. So Damiba cited the government its failure to suppress the Judist insurgents in Burkina Faso as the reason for the coup. So initially, Damiba's government was welcomed, but it struggled to control the insurgency. So as a result, Damiba himself was overthrown by his descendants of this late president Ibrahim Traore. So September 2023, there was another coup attempt where, of course, on September 26, 2023, descendants from Burkina Faso armed forces attempted to overthrow the ruling military junta led by Ibrahim Traore. So, however much Ibrahim Traore is also seen as a savior of Burkina Faso per now, but there have been a lot of course, overthrow attempts that have been done on his government. So he's not on the safe side. So that's why he tries to welcome these Russians to give him support, to give him security so that he can maintain himself in power. So Traore had assumed the power after Damiba's, of course, overthrow. So the coup attempt was foiled by intelligence gathered by the Burkinabe Intelligence Agency. So tensions escalated due to discontent within the army and, of course, sporadic gunfire that was, of course, reported uh, at the army base of Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso. So pro-Traore protests occurred, but coup was ultimately unsuccessful that tried, of course, to overthrow Traore from power. So the current situation of course, in Burkina Faso, Traore's rule remains in place, but the country continues to grapple with the security challenges posed by Judist groups. So Burkina Faso has become a focal point of conflict in the Sahel region, with thousands killed and millions displaced. So international actors, including, of course, United States and France itself, closely monitor the situation and criticize Traore's rule per now. So Burkina Faso, the history of Burkina Faso, of course, it includes Burkina Faso is of course a wide country which has a long history. uh, that includes various kingdoms within the country, such as most kingdoms, as well as the later French colonization of the territory and its independence as a republic of Upper Volta in 1960 to the current Burkina Faso that we see today. So, ancient and of course medieval history, we see that iron production occurred in regions near Dorura, of course, at least as far back as the 8th century, and was widely practiced across the region by the 5th century BC. We see that fantasies, mines, and of course surrounding dwelling datings from this time period are found across the country. That's why actually very many countries they are interested in this country because it has a lot of course, rich minerals and gold itself, which of course are most they are valuable at international markets. So we see that recent archaeological discoveries at Bura in southwest Niger and in adjacent southwest Burkina Faso have documented the existence of Iron Age Bura culture from the 3rd century to the 13th century. So the Bura Acida system and settlement apparently covered the lower Niger River Valley, including the Bora region of Burkina Faso. Further research, of course, is needed to understand the role of this early civilization that played in the ancient and, of course, medieval history of West Africa. When we look at the Ropeni is an ancient stone raid which was linked to the gold trade between the 14th and 17th centuries. It is also World Heritage Site in Burkina Faso. So from those times until the end of the 19th century, the central region uh, of present-day Burkina Faso was ruled by most people, descendants of of course, warriors of the Angoba people of present-day Ghana, who mixed with Mande and other local peoples in the 11th century. So during this time, the most kingdoms successfully defended their territory, religious beliefs, and social structure against forcible attempts and conquest and conversion by their Muslim neighbors to the northwest. So the French Upper Volta, we see that French arrived and claimed the area in 1896 in, of course, Burkina Faso was called Upper Volta. But Morsi resistance ended only with the capture of their capital, Ouagadougou, in 1901. So in 1919, at the end of the First World War, we see that certain provinces from Ivory Coast were united into French Upper Volta in the French West Africa. So federation in 1932, we see that a new colony was split up for economic reasons. It was, of course, reconstituted in 1937 as administrative division called the Upper Coast after World War II. The most actively pressured the French for separate territorial status, and on September 4th, 1947, Upper Volta became um, a French West Africa territory again in its own right. So we see that a revision in organization of French overseas territories began with the passage of the Basic Law, and of course in 1956. So this act was followed by recognition measures approved by the French Parliament, of course, in the early 1957, that ensured large degree of self-government for individual territories. So Upper Volta became an autonomous republic in the French community on, of course, December 1958, and became, of course, Burkina Faso. So France argued the Upper Volta becoming fully independent. We see that the Republic of Upper Volta declared independence on 5th August 1960. So the first president of Burkina Faso was called Maurice Yamego. so was the leader of the Volt Democratic Union. So the 1960 constitution provided for elections by universal suffrage of president and of course the National Assembly for 5-year term. So we see that soon after coming to power, Yamego banned all political parties very sorry. All Africa needs to get rid of the West and do so. Burkina Faso is on the way to doing good things for the people. So sorry guys for that little inconvenience about electricity. We are back. We are back. So, like I was saying that um, the Republic of Upper Volta declared independence on 5th August 1960. So the first president, like I said, was Maurice Yamego. So we see that the government, we see that uh, the 1960 Constitution provided for election by universal suffrage of the President and National Assembly for 5-year terms soon after coming to power. So Yamego banned all political parties and other UDV. So Yamego's government was viewed as corrupt and said to, of course, said to perpetuate neocolonialism by favoring French political and economic interests, which allowed politicians to enrich themselves but not the nation's peasants or small class of urban workers. So the government lasted until 1966 of Yamego. So he was in power for 6 years. So it lasted until 1966 when, after much arrest, including mass demonstration and strikes by students, labor unions, and civil servants, so the military intervened and disposed Yamego in the 1966. So Upper Volta coup d'etat. So the coup leaders suspended the constitution, dissolved the National Assembly, and placed Lieutenant Colonel, of course, Lamazana, um, at the head of the government of senior army officers. So the army remained in power for 4 years. On June 4th, 1970, so the Voltanians ratified a new constitution that established a 4-year transition period toward towards complete civilian rule. So we see that Lamizana remained in power throughout the 1970s as the president of military or mixed civil military governments. He faced a major crisis in form of the Sahel drought and was sent in 1973 to the UN and US in order to secure aid. So after the conflict over 1970 constitution, the new constitution was written and approved in 1977. And of course, Lamizana was re-elected by open elections in 78. So his government faced problems with the country's traditionally powerful trade unions, and of course in 1980, Colonel Saye Dembo overthrew President Lamizana and in a bloodless coup. Of course, Colonel Zebo established a military committee of recovery of national progress as the supreme government authority, thus eradicating the 1977 constitution in Upper Volta or Burkina Faso. So Colonel Zembo also encountered resistance from trade unions and was overthrown 2 years later on November 7th, 1882 by Major Dr. Jean. And we see that the Council of Popular, of course, Salvation of CSP, the CSP continued to ban political parties and organizations, yet promised a transition to civilian rule and new constitution. So Infighting developed between the right and the left, of course, factions of the CSP. The leader of the left's Captain Thomas Sankara was appointed Prime Minister in 1983, but subsequently, of course, arrested. Efforts to free him, directed by Captain, of course, resulted into a military coup in 1983. So the coup brought Sankara to power, and his government began to implement series of revolutionary programs, which included mass vaccinations, infrastructure improvements, the expansion of women's rights, encouragement of domestic agricultural consumption, and anti-desertification projects. So Burkina Faso, we see that on President Sankara's initiative in 1984, the country's name was changed from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, a native land, which of course means land of the upright or honest people. The presidential decree was confirmed by the National Assembly on 4th August. So Sankara's government was uh, formed the National Council of the Revolution (RCNR) with Sankara as its president, and established popular committees for the defense of the revolution. So the pioneers of the Revolution Youth Program were also established. So Sankara launched an ambitious socio-economic program for change, one of the largest ever undertaken on the African continent. So his foreign policies were centered on anti-imperialism, his government denying all foreign aid, pushing for odious debt reduction, nationalizing all land and mineral wealth, and averting the power and influence of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. So his domestic policies included a nationwide literacy campaign, land redistribution to peasants, railway and road construction, and outlawing of female genital mutilation, forced marriages, and polygamy. So Sankara pushed for agrarian self-sufficiency and promoted public health by vaccinating almost 2.5 million children against meningitis, yellow fever, and measles. So his national agenda also included planting over 10 million trees to halt the growing desertification of the Sahel. So Sankara called on every village to build a medical dispensary and had over 350 communities build schools with their own labor. So we see that 5-day war with Mali. On Christmas Day in 1885, tensions with Mali over the mineral-rich Agacha Strip erupted in a war that lasted 5 days and killed about 100 people. So the conflict ended after uh, mediation by President Felix Bijoni of Ivory Coast, and the conflict is known as the Christmas War in Burkina Faso. So many of the strict outstretched measures taken by Sankara met with growing resistance and disagreement despite his initial popularity and personal charisma. So problems began to surface in the implementation of the revolutionary ideas. So we see that the CDRs were, of course, which were formed as popular mass organizations, deteriorated in some areas into gangs of armed thugs and clashed the several trade unions. So tensions over the repressive tactics of the government and its overall direction mounted steadily, and by 1987 Sankara was assassinated in a coup which brought Captain, of course, Braisi to power. So Captain Henry Zongo and Major Jean Baptiste Bokori formed the Popular Front, which pledged to continue and pursue the goals of the revolution and, of course, rectify Sankara's deviations from the original aims. So the new government aims of course, Bugoisi support facility moderated many of the Sankara's policies as part of much discussed political openings process. Several political organizations, three of them non-Marxist, were of course accepted under the umbrella of political organization created in June 1989. So some members of the leftists organization power, we see that were against the admission of non-Marxist groups in the front. So on September 18, 1989, while of course were returning from the two-week trip in Asia, Lengani and Zongo were accused of plotting overthrow Popular Front. They were arrested and similarly executed the same night. So we see that Compaoré reorganized the government, appointed several new ministers, and assumed the portfolio of Minister of Defense and Security. We see that present security detail arrested about 30 civilians and military personnel accusing of plotting a coup in collaboration with, of course, the Burkinabe external opposition. So Burkina Faso adopted a new constitution in 1991, and of course, in February 2011, the death of a schoolboy provoked an uprising in the entire country lasting through April 2011, which was coupled with military mutiny and, of course, with the strike of magistrates. The overthrow of course, Compaoré in June 2014, we see that Compaoré's ruling party, the CDP, called on him to organize a referendum that would allow him to alter the constitution in order to seek re-election in 2015. So otherwise, he would be forced to step down due to term limits. So we see that in October 2014, the National Assembly was scheduled to debate an amendment to the Constitution which would be added Compaoré to stand for re-election as a president in 2015. So opponents protested this by storming the parliament building in Ouagadougou and starting fires inside it and looting offices. Billowing smoke was of course reported to be coming from building. So opposition spokesman, we see that Emily, we see that of course, who was of the People's Movement for Socialism or Federal Party, described the protests as Burkina Faso's Black Spring, like the Arab Spring. So Compaoré reacted to the events by, of course, shelving the proposed constitutional changes, dissolving the government, declaring a state of emergency, and offering to work with the opposition to resolve the crisis. Later in the day, we see that the military under General Honoré Touré announced that it would install a transitional government in consultation with all parties in the country, and the National Assembly was dissolved. He foresaw, of course, a return of the constitutional order with a year he did not make. With the year he did not make, of course, to leave the office at the end of the transition. So Compaoré announced he had left presidency and there was power vacuum. He also called for a free and transparent election with 90 days. So Yakub Isaac Zida then he took over the reins as a head of state. Um, in, of course, interim capacity, and on, of course, 17th November 2014, a civilian Micho Kafando was chosen to replace Zida as traditional head of state, and he was sworn in on 8th November. So Kafando then appointed Zida as the Prime Minister of Burkina Faso, and we see that in 2015, amid these tensions between the military and Prime Minister Zida, Kafando stripped Zida off the defense portfolio and took over the portfolio himself. He also took over the security portfolio previously held by Zida's Are Augustin Denise Barre. As part of the same reshuffle, he appointed, of course, Mosa to replace himself as the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So, September 2015 failed coup d'etat. We see that in September 2015, 2 days after the recommendation from the National Reconciliation and Reforms Commission to, of course, disband the regiment, the regiment of presidential security, members of the RISP detained President Kafando and Prime Minister Sida and installed the National Council of Democracy in power with Gilbert and, of course, its chairman. The military chief of staff, Brigadier General Prigroma, called on members of the RISP to lay down their arms, so promising in a statement that they would not be harmed if they surrendered peacefully. So Kafando was believed to remain under house arrest until September 21st, when he was reported to have arrived at the residence of French ambassador. So the regular army issued an ultimatum to the RISP to surrender by morning of 22nd September. So Kafando was, of course, reinstalled as the president at the ceremony in the same month, in the presence of ECOWAS leaders. We see that Burkina Faso also had elections in the same year. It was announced that the general elections would be held in November the same year, 2015. So the Congress for Democracy and Progress was banned from running a presidential candidate, but was still able to participate in the parliamentary elections. So the presidential elections were won by Mark Kabore of the People's Movement of Progress, who received 53% of the vote in his first round, of course, and negating the need for second round. The parliamentary election was also won by MPP, which scored over 34% of votes and won 55 seats in the National Assembly, followed by Union Progress and Reform. So the Congress for Democracy had only 13% of the seats in the parliament. We see that Kabore was sworn as a president in 2015, December 29th. Uh, and the status of course, Burkina Faso by 2018, we see that Burkina Faso is a poor landlocked country that, of course, depends on adequate rainfall, irregular patterns of rainfall, poor soil, and lack of adequate communications and other infrastructure contribute to the economy's vulnerability to external shocks. So, about 80% of the population is engaged in subsistence farming, and cotton is the main cash crop. The country has few natural resources and, of course, weak industrial base. Cotton and gold are Burkina Faso's key exports because it produces a lot of gold. So the key country has seen an upswing in gold exploration, production, and exports. So while the end of the political crisis has allowed Burkina Faso's economy to resume positive growth, the country's fragile security situation can put these gains at risk. So political insecurity in neighboring Mali, unreliable energy supplies, and poor transportation links pose long-term challenges. So civil unrest continue to become problematic. We see that the country experienced terrorist attacks in its capital in 2016, 17, and 18. And of course, and of course and of course continues to oppose to mobilize resources to counter terrorism. So several governments were warning their citizens not to travel into northern part of the country, into the several provinces in the eastern region. We see that in 2020 we had other elections in Burkina Faso state. We saw that President Roch Marco Christian Kabore was re-elected. However, his party movement, Do People (MPP) failed to reach absolute parliamentary majority. It secured over 56 seats out of the 127. So the Congress of Democracy and Progress, the party of the former president Blaise Compaoré, was distant the second with the 20 seats. So that is, of course, that short background uh, about Burkina Faso today. and what Burkina Faso is going through.
Okay, Williams, I'm good. How are you? Ah, I hope you're doing great. Mm, thank you, all those who are watching us now. Um, Burkina Faso. Um, expose more French diplomats. INNOSSETU has taken you guys through a brief history of course, Burkina Faso as a country. Ken Williams says that um, Burkina Faso is one of okay is on their way of doing good things for their people. Yeah, I would love to say that I agree with Ken Williams, but I'm a little bit not sure. Yeah, because we've had presidents come into power and promising us good. I'm yet to see a huge, despite of the currency and all that, the involvement of Burkina Faso in Russia still scares me a little bit. All right, so but yeah, we should wait to see how oh it all goes down. But of course, whew, I'm not feeling well, and I took this medicine, making me so dizzy out of it. Right? Anyway, we know that France's historical and ongoing involvement in Burkina Faso, as well as in other former French colonies in Africa, can be attributed to combination of economic, political, and strategic interests. All right. Burkina Faso, formerly known as the Upper Volta, was a French colony. All right, so maybe somebody may be like, okay, how the people of Burkina Faso, how is Burkina Faso as a nation expelling more French people? How are the French involved in Burkina Faso? Well, their involvement straight is traced back. Their involvement is traced back during the colonial era. And of course, Burkina Faso, which was known as the Upper Volta at that time, was a French colony until it gained its independence in 1960. All right. Now, France's history ties with Burkina Faso continue to influence their relationship as France maintains close political, economic, and cultural connection with its former colonies in Africa. So France is not maintaining only Burkina Faso. We when you go to when you are when you or drive back and you reverse to the colonial days. We had a lot of colonialists here, British, we have the German people, and of course the French involved, and others. But most of them, when we gained this so-called, Joe Williams says, Maria, I hope you feel better. I will. I will, and thank you for sure. I will. So when you look at this, most of these countries that colonized Africa when we gained this fake independence, though they are still controlling us, but in the back we have France. France refused to. France refused. France's existence in Africa is so visible. As we've seen these other countries withdrawing, we see that British still want to colonize us under the Commonwealth, but France is so visible. It still dictates apparently everything, and there is not much involvement of the United States within the French colonies compared to these other British. There is other British people stepped a little bit back, but I guess this was because of the treaties that they signed some time back that French did not sign actually. So you realize that French still involves, but now we are seeing Burkina Faso deciding to break away from French, and of course we're expelling more of their diplomats. Of course, during Ibrahim Tour's, you know, okay, the first weeks of Ibrahim Toure coming into office, we saw eviction of a lot of French diplomats, and but as France was refused, and of course we saw most of them move, like the ambassadors and others, and now Burkina Faso continues to, of course, get rid of more of the people in. More of the French people in, of course, Burkina Faso. Well, I will give a louder pause to, of course, Ibrahim Traore for this kind of act, and we are waiting to see other African countries deciding this. As, of course, his actions are giving us hope, just like K. Williams says, he believes that there is. And Burkina Faso is going to do a lot of good things for its people. But like I said, I'm a little bit scared because as Burkina Faso gets rid of the French, it's embracing the Russians. And these people are no different for sure. These people are no different. They want to exploit whatever France wants in Burkina Faso. Russia wants maybe even 10 times. All right. So, well, we shall wait and see. Let's give it time. And but of course, like Innocent was trying to explain to us that um but maybe Toure needs backup, or he needs security, or he needs someone to protect him. Maybe this is why he's embracing Russia. These are the same mistakes politicians in Africa have been doing. They've been signing treaties of protection and becoming immune against other countries that are becoming prey to these very other countries. I guess it's not only Ibrahim Traore who is signing the protection treaties, but we've seen most of the African leaders who are coming into power signing treaties with the colonial masters. You understand? They keep on signing treaties. This is why the African leaders are still controlled because of these particular treaties. Ibrahim Toure may be embracing Russia, and he thinks maybe Russia is in to help Burkina Faso, but Russia is as greedy as the French. So, as he says this treaty, time is going to reach when he's dancing on the tunes of the Russians because of the agreements they are doing behind the curtains that we are not so aware of. But I know before everything ends, we shall, of course, get to know what is going on between Ibrahim Traore, the whole Burkina Faso as a government, and of course the Russian people. Kerr Williams says, yes, the French is not just going to walk away, it will be uh, pro- there will be problems, I guess. Yeah, of course, and and then this is the problem. If only we were united, I believe that we can stand to fight against the colonialists or these so-called exploiters. All right. But now Ibrahim Traore, remember the time when they set up who we saw Nigeria want coming into disagreeing with the actions that were in, of course, Burkina Faso, Mali, and other countries. But I think this was because there is that there is there are principles within the group they had, all right, at that time. But let me first read Royal Constructor. Say that greetings, Maria. Please keep up the good work. That was for network and grow, keep one power prosperity by any means necessary. Thank you so much, Royal Constructor. Thank you so much for that comment. Um, mhm. So we know that um, Africa being a rich continent is not news, all right. But Burkina Faso is rich in mineral resources, including gold, manganese, and limestone. Now, French companies are involved in mining activities and have a significant investment in the country's mining sector. I'm telling you, the moment Burkina Faso lets the moment France lets Burkina Faso go completely, you're going to see how it's going to deteriorate because France's growth has actually um, depended on, let me sit here a little bit, has depended on Burkina Faso for a very, very long time. But of course, France is one of Burkina Faso's main trade. France was one of Burkina Faso's main. Let me see. Cameroon says that is where they are getting all their resources from. Exactly like I said, the moment France knows, all right, because for a very since Burkina Faso's existence, France has been one of Burkina Faso's main trading pattern. All right, and of course there are strong economic ties. There were strong economic ties. Now they are not. They are no longer there between the two countries. With the France importing agricultural products, textiles, and minerals from Burkina Faso, and exporting machinery, vehicles, and pharmaceuticals to the countries. You know, with the it's a little bit crazy. When it comes to the way I even wonder why some countries really think Africa can do away with the foreign countries, but it is very hard for the foreign countries to do away without Africa. So who is the big man here? France for a very long time. If you look at the, if we are to discuss the kind of rule France had on Africa or on the French colonies, you realize that France has been one of the colonial countries that has been so barbaric. It has been so barbaric. It has massacred. It has showed its power extremely. It has displayed its cowardness. I call that because we've not seen it. I mean, they when I go back into that, it pisses me a little bit. But France now still wants to cling to Burkina Faso, and even after, of course, disrespecting. Last time, Macaroni, there is a way Macaroni talks about Burkina Faso in African countries, but we know who needs the other. All right. All right, France and Burkina Faso have strong. They have had a lot of exchanges, and this remember that there is a lot of French a culture that has been, of course, exchanged with to the Burkina Faso country. The culture, exchange of programs, educational initiatives, and France was making sure that the entire Burkina Faso's education system is, of course, influenced by the French. You have to understand France at the back of your hand. You have to everything about it. Like when we go, of course, like last time I was saying, I was giving an example that when you enter that train in Nairobi, that train that was built by the Chinese, most of the how should I call them? The safety measures are written. All right, they are written in Chinese. But how many people really know the Chinese? Mm? How many people really know Chinese? How can you write those measures in Chinese? What do you expect? Are the people in China? Are the people in Kenya speaking Chinese? So these people, each time they touch Africa, they want to leave their mark. They want to leave their mark. They want to leave a print in Africa. All right, we have seen this throughout their existence in the here in Africa. But of course, we know that France and Burkina Faso, they were maintaining a diplomatic relationship via cooperation on various international issues. France claimed to be supporting Burkina Faso's development efforts, providing technology, and this technology has not been for free. And all the technology that France was giving to Burkina Faso was, of course, to the advantage of the French people or the French government. Um, we know that now that Burkina Faso is deciding to withdraw from French and expelling more of its diplomats. At the beginning, we saw them expelling big diplomats that French or France was, of course, shaken. And then we saw them trembling, looking left and right. But of course, Ibrahim Torres said, no matter what, you are going out of Burkina Faso. And France has tried so very much to find ways of talking, of course, and calming this down. But of course, Ibrahim Toure rejected all the talks. Now, of course, we still saw France supporting other groups of people in Burkina Faso who were up against Ibrahim Toure. If you remember, I think Ibrahim Toure has had there has been like 3 attempts on Ibrahim Toure's life, all right, since he came into power. Now, what does this mean? Ibrahim Toure is not only a threat to the opposition people in Burkina Faso, but also to the colonizers. When Ibrahim Toure was rejecting France, we saw the United States of America, of course, wishing to dive in the system. But of course, the Jabba is here. All right. The Jabba says that, oh, Kel Williams, you're going. Kel Williams says, take care, people. Where is the Jabba's comments? Let me just scroll a little bit up. Okay. Where is Jabba? All right. Jabba says, hi, family. In order for and Ken Williams says, in order for Africa to be left alone, they must get rid of all those puppets and get a strong military. All right. Mhm. That's where they are getting all their resources. And of course, Ken Williams says peace. Take care, family. Thank you so much, Williams, for your time, and Jupiter, thank you for coming through. And of course, we still have our Royal Construct. I'll call you Royal. Thank you for being here, and of course, thank you for, of course, the motivation comment over there. You know, the comment of Kerr Williams that in order for Africans to be left alone, they must get rid of all those puppets and get a strong military. Uh, I really agree with you, and this is basically why I'm not like counting on Ibrahim Torre 100% because he's still following the wrong path of embracing the French, sorry, the Russians. And this has, and at the end, he may not be a puppet to the French, but it's going to be a puppet to the Russians, whether we like it or not. But again, him being a puppet to Russians may not be so loud. Like I've told you, Russians have been in Africa for a very long time, but there is a way they rule, all right? And they're always on low key. They don't involve. They try. They keep saying they don't involve in the politics of the countries that they are partnering with or stuff like that. But I guess this time we shall have to see. I know they do because whoever you sign the agreement with, of course, is your interest. But of course, we have seen Russia usually crosses. For them, they don't really care who is coming into power and who is not. Because at one time they'll be protecting this president, and then they'll be also protecting the rebels. And when the rebels take place, they still come in. They chase whoever they were protecting before, and so on. Oh, so, oh, I'll let you know to say something, guys, and as I come back.
So, Jib Jabba, thank you for coming in our live. Uh, so, there are a lot of atrocities that have been done by the so-called former colonial masters in African countries, and actually the new colonial masters that we see now. There are a lot of atrocities that have done uh, in the past and now. Because for Russia, we see how the Wagner group is killing people, how that Wagner group is, of course, raping women in West African countries. The people that came to protect the governments of dictators in Africa, in East African, in West African countries. So we shouldn't take this for granted because there is no good European. There is no good European. Like there is no good European. All of them they come with aims which they must of course accomplish at the end of it. So they will never invest anything anywhere which is not of course profitable. We see that from 18, when we look at atrocities besides Burkina Faso that have been done in Africa and majorly in Congo, uh, we see that from 1885 to 1908, many atrocities were committed in Congo Free State, the today Democratic Republic of Congo, under the absolute rule of King Leopold II of the Belgian. So these atrocities were, of course, particularly associated with labor policies uh, enforced by colonial administrators, um, used to collect natural rubber for export, combined with epidemic diseases, famine, and of course, falling birth rates caused by this disruption. So the atrocities uh, of course, the combined epidemic diseases, famine, falling birth rates, like I said, but the atrocides contributed to sharp decline in Congo's population, and of course, the magnitude with the population fall over the period, and of course, disputed with modern estimates ranging from 1.5 to 13 million. So after the Belgian Conference in 1884 to 1885, we see that European powers allocated most of the Congo Basin region to supposedly organization run by Leopold II, who had long-held ambitions for colonial expansion. So the territory under Leopold is Kit once said that I was supporting Leopold. So the territory under Leopold's control exceeded, of course, almost 2 million kilometers, more than 85 times the territory of the region. And amid financial problems, it was directly a tiny cadre of administration drawn from across Europe. So initially, the Kwas colony proved, and of course, profitable and insufficient, with state always closed to bankrupt. So the boom in demand for natural rubber, and of course, was abundant in the territory, created, of course, radical shift in the 1890s to facilitate the extraction of export of rubber. So all vacant land in Congo was nationalized, with the majority distributed to private companies as concessions. Some was of course kept by the state uh, uh, between 1891 and 1906. So the companies were allowed to free reign to exploit the concessions, with the result being that between 1891 to 96, the companies, of course, forced labor and, of course, violent coercions were used to correct rubber cheaply, maximize, of course, profits, and the Free State military force. We see that the main direct cause of the population decline was diseases during that time in Congo. And we see all these things happening in, of course, all colonies, all former colonies, and all colonies, and all countries in Africa under colonial rule. And even up to now, the diseases they are getting today, it is due to the policies that were mended, the policies that, of course, were created by the colonial masters, which of course exacerbated by the social disruption caused by the atrocities of the Free States. A number of epidemics, notably African sleeping sickness, smallpox, swine, influenza, and of course amoebic dynasty, ravaged the indigenous populations. So we see that uh, however much today we see what, of course, uh, however much today we see we see like people are coming out to, of course, West African countries, they're coming out to join um, hands with Russia, but of course, all West African countries have uh, the same ideas, the same cause. They aim at the same things. So if, of course, Burkina Faso had nothing to give to the Russians, we wouldn't see, of course, Russians in Congo today. But just because it has something to give, that's why we are able to see Russians in Burkina Faso today. And the mistake that the great mistake Burkina Faso's government is doing today, it's like it is forgetting, it's not focusing on it's not looking to of what brought it's not looking at what brought of course the Russians to Burkina Faso, and why Russians are supporting Burkina Faso. However much we would wish even other countries to act like Burkina Faso, but what is coming out of right Russia is about a business, no profit, no interest. Mm. So, um, so should we expect Burkina Faso should we expect Burkina Faso, because by now, because this junta, of course, government has been in existence for now 2.5 years. Yes, but we have not seen. We are seeing a lot of Russians. They are flowing into Russia, but we have not seen those fundamental changes in Burkina Faso's structures. When we look at the infrastructure, when we look at the economy, when we look at how things, of course, are run, how things are run, amidst, of course, chasing away all, abolishing the French press, radios, and of course some newspapers in Burkina Faso, but we still see people using French language. Now people are adopting to learn now Russian language in Burkina Faso. So I see this is just a transition of power from from the French to the Russians, which of course which doesn't add up. If at all they want to give support to, of course, Burkina Faso, if at all Russia wants to give support to Burkina Faso, does it need for Russia to bring its armies to Burkina Faso? Is it necessary for, of course, Russia to bring experts that can mine gold to Burkina Faso? So should we think that Burkina Faso doesn't have experts that can mine their gold, be processed within Burkina Faso without the existence of Russians? Because this was just a transition of power from the Russians to the from the French to the Russians. Because and by the way, President Torre, like, maybe his advisors would they would look into this, like, for the time the previous president and the previous ally of Burkina Faso, France, what did Burkina Faso gain for the 2 years? Of course, Russia has been into Burkina Faso's politics. What has Burkina Faso gained for this small time, apart from the of course unfulfilled promises that have been made to Burkina Faso, building the nuclear plant, the nuclear plant, doing stuffs, creating, building hospitals. For me, I'm seeing these people. They are they are focusing so much on, of course, teaching Russians. I mean, teaching Burkina Faso people Russian language. Of course, Burkina Faso seeing the Russian, of course, military in Burkina Faso. These are the things that are, of course, that I'm seeing that are growing on high speed in Burkina Faso. But I've not seen things like trade deals between Burkina Faso and Russia. Mm. But now Russia has been, of course, destroyed by Russia's economy has been destroyed by the Ukrainian war. It is now using that advantage to most of the West African countries, supporting coup d'etats and other things. Those, of course, the mercenaries, like I said, Jib Jabba, the Wagner group. These are people that are killing civilians in, of course, in Burkina Faso. These are people. This is the armed group that is raping women in Burkina Faso. They are raping women, kids. They are doing a lot of atrocities. But like West Africans, like we can't, like they can't wake up. Like Africans, we don't learn from our mistakes, and we have not learned from the legacy of colonization and what colonization brought to Africa. Because this is a new form of colonization that we are seeing. If you don't see Russia somewhere, you will see China somewhere. If you don't see if you don't see China, you will see Russia. So Why is it that we can't see this out? We can't reason this out that these people they are playing on our minds. These people are focusing on resources that we have in Africa. Burkina Faso has, of course, has gold. Burkina Faso has a lot of gold, and when we look at the main export in Burkina Faso, it's gold. Even Russians, they are taking gold. However, like I was watching a certain video the other time, um, uh, like Russia is trying to build now plants that can process gold from raw form to, of course, to refined gold within Burkina Faso. But it is Russian, of course, military that is guarding these mineral areas in Burkina Faso. Not even the Burkina Faso's government military. What does it mean? That even a native Burkina Faso person is not going to enjoy, of course, in this gold, which doesn't add up. Which doesn't add up. How are people going to gain? Apart from Traore, as a person, may of course get rich. He may get some money. He may, his kids may be taken to, of course, Russia. They start from Russia. They have that noble life. But how about people in Burkina Faso? However much we see that social media, when we look at all social media around Burkina Faso, we see banners of Russia, people carrying banners of Russia. But should we think that these people they are doing it at their own consent, or they are paid to do that? How did the people learn about all this matrix, the politics that is going on in Burkina Faso? They even come out because wherever we are seeing about Burkina Faso, France, and of course Russia, we see it on social media. Should we think that these, of course, beautiful photos we see with the people carrying, of course, banners of Russian flags and banners of Putin within Burkina Faso, are these people doing it from their own heart, out of their own consent, or they are paid to do that? Because I don't think all people, of course, in Burkina Faso like Russia. People don't want bazungus. People have testified about the bitterness of bazungus. Let it be French, let it be Russian. People have testified the taste of the bazungus in Africa rather than any other place. So, 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 so I'm going to mention some of course, the atrocities that have been done by, of course, Russia uh, in Western countries. Russia is having that, of course, that that violent group, the Wagner group, that is of course uh, 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 that is of course that it uses in some of the operations in of course in West Africa. We talked about Wagner group some time back, but because Russia is not only in, of course, in Burkina Faso, it is seen in very many of course, West African countries. But we see that after years of denying the Russian government links to the Wagner Group, we see that President Putin admitted last year in June that the Kremlin provided 86 billion, of course, rubles, which is approximately to 940 USD million. So, in a financial support to the group from, of course, May 2022 and last year. So, the depth of Wagner Group leader Yuvrin, of course, in August 2023, provided an opportunity to review some of the most, of course, egregious ways in which the Russian government has lied about the war. So purposes and so-called successes of the Wagner Group, we see that the transitional criminal organization group's exploitation of African resources, notably gold, diamond, and timber. This Wagner Group, by the way, they are still in Burkina Faso, is one of the node of the destabilizing influence across Africa. So working out group forces have of course reportedly raised the entire villages and murdered civilians in Central African Republic to advance their economic interests in the mining sector, participated in the unlawful execution of people in Mali, and of course raided of course artisanal gold mines in Sudan, and of course undermine democratic institution in every country where they have worked. You call them at your own will, but these people, by the time they reach your country, they start making decisions upon their own will, upon their, because they have arms. They are, of course, they are. They think that they are superior more than Africans. There is no Muslim who will praise an African, and I don't know why these West Africans. That for me, I think after the West Africans had chased the French, they would of course liberate themselves as one government without involving any external forces. But we see that they have also been accused of paying their bills in counterfeit currency in African countries. This is a Russian group, the Wagner group. They pay their bills in African countries in counterfeit dollars, in counterfeit money. So this pattern of criminal behavior and preying on Africans is not going to end with, of course, this Russian group. So wherever Wagner deploys, of course, a stark rise in civilian death follows immediately. We see that according to The Economist and the recent armed conflict location and the event, data violence that perpetrated against civilians by, of course, Wagner Group in Mali and Central African Republic is not only, of course, frequent but far more deadly to non-combatants than the state-led of the rebel force attacks, according to different sources. So Russia, we see that there are a lot of lies Russia has made to most of the West African countries, but it's like Africans, we are big-headed. Africans, we don't learn from mistakes like I learned. We have not learned from a colonial period or colonial legacy, what colonial legacy has brought to Africa, and how we are suffering and swimming into suffering because of colonial legacy. Because like these Bazungus come here, lie about whatever, and leave, take our gold, take users, you know. Now we see that Russia lied about Central African Republic. So Russia's disinformation and propaganda ecosystem falsely portrays the Wagner Group as playing a positive role in nations such as the Central African Republic. So, although the Wagner Group has of course been deployed in the Central African Republic since 2018, Russian officials still refer to the group's forces as Russian instructors. Can you imagine? When discussing the group's activities, the narrative that continued after, of course, Progojev's death in August 2023, Russian officials quoted in Russian state-funded media claim that the Russian instructors, which are the, of course, are the mercenaries, the Wagner Group, have served Central African Republic and are strengthening peace and stability to bring lasting peace in the region. So these are lies. We see that these fighters, the fighters of the Wagner Group, remain, of course, Central African Republic. So in inhabitants of the Central African Republic can sleep peacefully, which is wrong. This is not true. So the republic has become a place where we have seen Central African Republic. A lot of people have been killed in Central African Republic. Like I said, at the moment, yes, the French were, in, of course, in these countries, in these Western African countries, but we weren't seeing deaths rising as we see Russia in these countries, because Russia is too much of a militant uh, country than anything. Is too much into militarism. Russia as a country, so we have seen a lot of deaths compared to when, of course, France was within West African countries. I don't second hand the French, but according to statistics, we are seeing a lot of deaths now compared. So, so we see that the Wagner forces used to, of course, to indiscriminate killings, abductions, and rape to gain control of the key mining areas near the city of Bambari in the Central African Republic, with the survivors describing the attacks in details. To say killings and is of course underestimated. It was a total carnage. So we see that a lot of people have been killed around these mining areas, not only in the Central African Republic, but even even in what, even in Burkina Faso. I was saying that when you look at all gold mines in Burkina Faso, they are surrounded by these groups. They are surrounded they are surrounded by Russian armies. These people focus on they are surrounded by Russian armies, which makes everything, of course, terrible in West Africa, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, and of course other countries. So we see that the people in Central African Republic, including journalists, aid workers, and minorities, as well as international peacekeepers, have been violently harassed and threatened by the so-called Russian instructors from the Wagner Group. So despite of the Russia and the Wagner claims that bring stability to the areas it operates in group operations from the Central African Republic, are all and all allegedly outside the house of government's awareness, plotted to overthrow the government of Chad in early 2023. So an action that could have exacerbated an already challenging humanitarian situation for women, children, and other civilians. So there are also further lies that have been made in Mali still. We see that Russian officials, Russian state-funded media, and of course the Kremlin-linked Telegram channels continuously message on the Wagner Group's allegedly positive role in Mali since the group's deployment in 2021. So despite of these posts, we see that Mali's transition government has yet to, of course, publicly acknowledge the Wagner Group as the Wagner Group is in Mali. So propaganda videos continue to circulate online portraying Wagner Group forces as saviors and warrior angels. Before Wagner Group deployment to Mali, Russia highlighted false narrative like those it deployed about Central African Republic. So repeating the myth that Russian instructors would bring peace, stability, and deployed about Central African Republic. Repeating the myth that Russian instructors, the Wagner Group, would bring peace, stability, and would also have new success at fighting, of course, counterterrorism in the country. So we see that Malian news sites that the Wagner Group was doing excellent work all over the world, claiming it will fight terrorism everywhere. Russia's linked propaganda video circulating after Wagner's deployment to Mali at the end of 21 falsely suggested that the United States and France are supporting violent religious extremists in Mali, which is not true. So the truth about the Wagner Group in Mali, we see that contrary to the Russia's claim, the Wagner Group has not been effective in countering terrorism in Mali since first deployed in December 2021. We see that in August 2023, the ISIS Sahel almost doubled its territorial control in Mali in less than a year. So Wagner Group has failed to make Mali suffer, with the 2022 being the deadliest year for civilians in Mali since the current conflict broke out in 2022. So Wagner Group forces were of course captured on video in April 22, of course burying dozens of bodies in mass grave near the Gossi military base in Mali. So Wagner Group then, of course, produced misleading edited videos attempting to falsely blame French military for the incident in order to increase anti-French and anti-Western sentiments in Mali. There are even lies about Sudan Russians have made. So these Russians, they are liars. And of course, Russian government, as a government, it sends this Wagner group in these countries. It doesn't bring real officials to African countries. It sends off this Wagner group people. Uh, we see that Russian officials and Wagner Group representatives have repeatedly claimed that Wagner Group has no military presence in Sudan, and of course that Russia is not involved in the country's bloody civil war between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces led by General Dagalo. So Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs had stated that Russia only, of course, Russia only, that Russian, of course, Minister of Foreign Affairs has stated that Russia only desires a peaceful resolution to the conflict. In April last year, we see that a statement, of course, added the Wagner PMC in no way involved in the Sudanese conflict. So Russia also constantly portrays itself as a disinterested actor in Sudan, merely seeking to assist the country in, of course, strengthening its security, stability, and economic development. So, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, in, of course, in 2023 June, meeting with the Sudanese deputy chairperson of the Transitional Sovereignty Council, expressed deep concern over the crisis. So Lavrov added that Russia is watching with concern what is happening in Sudan and is interested in, of course, helping to create conditions for normalizing. But the truth is, Wagner Group missionaries in Sudan have killed scores of Sudanese miners working in, of course, artisanal gold mines along the border between Sudan and the Central African Republic. This is according to survivors of these attacks while they loot Sudanese rich gold mines. Like I said, all mining areas in Africa, they are surrounded. Where of course, in West African countries where Russia is, they are surrounded by this Wagner group, by Russian military. No African is allowed to is of course allowed to go in those places unless when he's of course admitted. So other survivors report that Wagner mercenaries have attacked, of course, encampments full of migrant workers and miners along the Sudanese and Central African Republic border. Shootings indiscriminately. So a witness who lost his brother and 6 relatives at the hands of the Wagner soldiers said more than 70 people were killed in the single attack. So this is how these people are killing people recklessly. There are also lies in Libya. We see that Libya has been, of course, unstable for some good time since 2011. Libya has never attained peace. Libya has never attained stability. We have seen different governments. Whoever holds Right, Russia for the big now. So I don't know why today this is happening, but I was still talking. I was still explaining about how uh, different lies have been made by Russia in of course in African countries. I was talking about the Libya, how Russia made lies in Libya. Like I said before, uh, Russia Russia's state sponsored media outlets regularly accuse NATO forces of destroying the Libyan state and, of course, initiating the ongoing instability there in pursuit of its member states' own interests. So these propaganda outlets support Russia's false narrative, portraying itself as an altruistic and colonial power seeking only to hold African countries. For years, the Russian government rejected any claims of Russian mercenary or military presence in Libya, with, of course, but we see that Russian government representatives repeatedly argued that the accusations it had taken uh, sides in Libya conflicts were lies, and it strove for a ceasefire and a political settlement of the conflict. So, in 2020, Russian envoy, we see that or to the UN vastly condemned accusations of Russian mercenary involvement in Libya as largely based to, of course, any, of course, reunified or spurious data aimed at, of course, discrediting Russia's policy on Libya. This obviously blurted the story. So, when we look at the truth about Wagner Group in Libya, Wagner Group as an admitted, of course, Russian government-backed entity, reportedly that has acted contrary to the UN Security Council resolution, of course, 1970 and other relevant resolutions by providing military equipment and mercenaries to the front lines of Libya conflict, including fighter aircraft, armed vehicles, and air defense systems. We see that according to the US Africa Command, at least 14 MiG 29 and of course SU 24s were painted over to disguise the Russian marks of the origin, and they flown from Russia's bases in Syria to Libya. So Wagner Group is prolonging conflict, uh, uh, responsible for the needless suffering, needless suffering and the deaths of innocent civilians in uh, Libya. So the Wagner Group, we see that placed landmines and of course booby traps while withdrawing from Tripoli in 2020, according to the public reporting. So mines and other explosive ordnance reportedly killed and wounded more than 300 people in Libya between May 2020 and March 2022, including areas formerly controlled by Wagner Group forces. So the UN fact-finding mission in Libya final report indicated that Wagner forces placed military explosives in homes, inside sofas and bathrooms, um, fixtures, and other civilian areas, which led to death and the injury of civilians. So the FFM determined that Wagner personnel may have violated the international law principle of course, proportionality and the obligation to minimize the indiscriminate effects of mines and other explosives, as well as violating the right to life of Libyans by not clearing the ordinance for the safety of civilians. So Wagner Group also conducted disinformation campaigns in Libya in attempt to boost support of Russian allied figures who oppose the UN recognized government in Tripoli. According to the Government Center for Strategic Studies, Wagner built a social media apparatus in Libya to promote Haftar, of course, Haftar, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, and other political figures whom the Kremlin believed could become future clients of Russia, using methods of course reminiscent of previous leader-led interference in other regions. Elections, according to, of course, the Stanford Internet, we see that Wagner created at least 12 different Facebook groups to manipulate Libyans' public opinion, and these pages were viewed by over 2 million users each week. So Wagner also purchased 50% of the former Libyan state-run broadcasting company, of course, the A1 Jamahalia TV, transferring its studios to a location overseas and reviewing its broadcasts into Libya. Sure. So of course, Russia is responsible for this information and propaganda ecosystem. This information and propaganda ecosystem continue to deploy false narratives, such as those outlined above, that deflect attention from the avoid responsibility for the Wagner Group's human rights abuses and atrocities. So the Kremlin-backed Wagner Group exploits insecurity to expand Russia's presence in Africa for political influence and, of course, financial gain. In doing so, they threaten stability and human rights on the continent. In January 2023, we see that Wagner Group as a transitional criminal organization for committing among the endless acts. So ongoing patterns of serious criminal activity, including mass executions, rape, child abductions, and physical abuse in Central African Republic, Mali, and of course Burkina Faso. Russia is of course responsible for these acts in these countries. So it's high time for Russia, for African countries to wake up and of course act. It's high time for African countries to wake up and act accordingly towards these acts that are done by Russia in African countries. However much it promises security, which it doesn't, it uses so much of propaganda and of course killing civilians in, of course, West African countries and even other countries, because you have seen killings in Sudan, Mali, Libya, and the other countries where, of course, Russia has been putting a stay. So this still serves as a problem to West African countries, because we can never have peace if at all even the peace that is created is destroyed by these Russian groups, because it sends the so-called instructors in Africa. So, so they call themselves instructors because they are under Russian Russian government influence. That's why they come out to do their stuffs and all the criminals in Africa. But but it's high time for African countries to, of course, wake up and do something towards whatever these people are doing in, of course, African countries, because you can't be like killing people everywhere and, of course, you promise to bring peace, but you keep on killing people. I don't see any sense in that. To me, I don't see any sense. Like, I don't see, because wherever these people promised peace in African countries, they're just killing people. They're just protecting mines as if these mines they are for Russians. Even there are those when we look at mines in Africa, there are those mines that are, of course, where everyone can get access to. But these people get surrounded to every mine. They get surrounded to all mining areas in African countries. So you may not have a chance to do any mining activity in any mine, which serves as a challenge uh, to African countries and Africa. It really serves as. So, as per now, something must be done to those countries where we see Russia, because most of African countries, besides having very many problems, uh, economic problems, um, um, social problems like poor education system, poor roads, uh, dying culture we have in Africa. We can't add another problem of Russia, because very many people are now threatened